6 people, so I think maybe we can start, right? Okay, lovely. So welcome everyone. I'm Vivian Dumpa. I'm from Placemaking X, and I'm very happy to welcome you today to our second webinar of the Real Place City Challenge. We have developed a very interesting webinar for you, the second of our series, on the impact. How can we create real impact for places to play in cities by children and for children, inspired action, sharing international knowledge, and enhancing impact. The real play, and so we invite you, as it is also November, the global month for play, to play with us during this webinar and see how we can reclaim places to play in cities for children. Next one. The Real Play City Challenge aims to inspire action in safe, child-friendly and playful urban practice. It also aims to optimize, integrate and disseminate international knowledge, and we will tell you how we do that, and enhance impact by catalyzing, replicating and scaling initiatives around the globe. You are more than welcome to find more information about our project and program on the website that you see at the bottom of the slide, and follow our hashtag with Real Play City Challenge. Next one, please. So, but how do we do that? We do that, we have managed to do that already by launching an open call for citizen placemakers to share their tried and tested initiatives in child-friendly, safe and playful urban practice. And you will learn more about the winners from the previous webinar and the upcoming ones. We are doing then with these webinars that you're currently participating to learn from one another and strengthen our practice together. And we also do it by having a context within the initiatives can scale up. These are our winning placemakers where they will be able to use their money awards to develop and improve their existing initiative to deliver in different contexts. Next one, please. So the winners of the Real Place City Challenge call have been announced, and we're blown away by the quality and diversity of initiatives that we have welcomed in our call from around the world. Our jury selected 10 winners from 6 different countries. You can find more about them on our website. Next one. So as you see, we have already planned and already organized 4 webinars within this context. Today, this is the second of the 4 of the webinars in November, which, as I said before, is the Global Month of Play, which you can also join and participate. Today, we will consider how to create real impact for children, particularly focusing on how assessment and evaluation of initiatives can develop further. And let's go to the agenda for the day. So first of all, as I already introduced myself, I'm Vivian Duba, and I will be the moderator and the host for you today. Then we will move to Dr. Helen Haddani, who will be the first speaker addressing the approaches to assessment and evaluation. Then we will have the presentation of the winning placemaker of our open call, Emerald Dupoma Badia and Jahanara Ahmad from BRAC Community-Based Play Lab. Then we will have a playful placemaking clinic, an interactive part when we can all get insights and knowledge and exchange with Anna Siprikova, Hussam Elokta, and Sam Sterling. And then we will have a sum up of our session about what we learned and what will be about the next webinars. So a little bit, I can tell you, I can briefly introduce you to the participants and speakers of the day. Next one, please. Next slide. Thank you. So together with us, as I mentioned before, we have Emerald Tupoma Baidia by BRAC Community-Based Play Lab, Jahanara Ahmad from the same organization, Dr. Helen Haddani from Brookings Institution, and Anna Siprikova from NACTU, Hussam Elokta from Happy City, and Sam Sterling from who is an urban behavioral consultant. So let's go to the first speaker. Please allow me to introduce you to Dr. Helen Haddani. One second, so that I don't make any mistake on the pronunciation. Dr. Helen Haddani is a fellow at the Brookings Institution and an expert in early childhood and creativity development. Helen was on the nomination jury for the Real Plate City Challenge, so where all the proposals got selected. And we invited her today because of her work examining measures that bridge the gap between child development and placemaking. So Helen, thank you very much for joining us today. You have 5 minutes to present us your whole insights and approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vivian. I'm going to start sharing my screen, have a few slides. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, wherever you're tuning in from. So I'm just going to give some brief opening remarks to frame our session today. We find ourselves at a very exciting moment as there is a growing space and local experiences contributing to the playful learning field. At the same time, the global pandemic has really underscored that children, especially those living in under-resourced communities, need a wider range of opportunities for play and learning in the places they go every day with their families. And urban spaces offer a promising yet underutilized platform for dual impact to support children's learning through play and also using public spaces for communal good. So given the critical role that data plays in the scaling process, there is a need to better understand the impact of playful learning and how it is sustained over time. This includes developing shared metrics across playful learning initiatives that demonstrate both the shorter and longer term improvements on child development outcomes, as well as community revitalization impacts. So what we're trying to do is bridge this gap between playful learning and placemaking and examine or explore this space of playful placemaking. And so as one example, Playful Learning Landscapes, which I know is one of the other contestant winners and was featured in last week's webinar, I believe. Playful Learning Landscapes is a collaboration between Playful Learning Landscapes Action Network, the Brookings Institution, and Temple University, along with many other partners and collaborators. As an example of what to measure, what you see here are outcomes from the child development perspective, so increases in caregiver and child interactions. What this means is measuring the number or the quantity of conversations between caregivers and children, and in some of our installations seeing increases up to 33%. And also looking at the quality of those language exchanges. So families talking more about numbers, letters, colors, spatial relations. At the same time, Playful Learning Landscapes also is around the revitalization of the public realm. For example, transforming vacant lots and bus stops, and also creating new opportunities for social interactions for adults and children alike. So going sort of one step deeper into that, what does it look like if you're going to measure things from a child development perspective? This is just one framework that Playful Learning Landscapes focuses on. We call these the 6 C's of learning. As you can see in this table, for collaboration, communication, content, critical thinking, creative innovation, and confidence, you see that these all level up. So the first step in the 6 C's pathway is collaboration, from playing alone to seeing children play side by side, to having back and forth interactions, to then building something or creating something together. So maybe what you're looking for in a public space that promotes play is children doing things truly collaboratively, or for communication, like I just mentioned, more communication, more collaborative, communicative interactions between parents and children. More from the placemaking side, this is just one example from the City at Eye Level for Kids for some of their microplace scale assessments, or what you could be looking at to evaluate a public space or an urban space in terms of urban design and placemaking. So looking at maybe a co-creative design that includes children, parents, and educators from the beginning to the end of the process. Also, maybe looking at the variety of age and gender for the places and the play equipment. Have those been designed so that they include both boys and girls and can accommodate different places, different preferences for play depending on the age of the child. So this is just a snapshot of what's included in the city at iLevel for Kids. And again, is more of from the placemaking or urban design side, what you might be looking for. A couple of handful of considerations for setting up your initiative for assessment and evaluation. Creating a common vision, often with the community and your key stakeholders. This could include maybe a learning outcome. So you want to foster more collaboration and communication between adults, caregivers, and children at a bus stop or at a park. You want to build maybe more STEM learning as children walk to school. You might also want to identify research partners. I know that BRAC, who is the initiative that is going to be featured in today's webinar, has worked closely with with universities and research institutions. So identifying research partners that can help you collect the data to evaluate your initiative. Also building in time for evaluation and refinement. Many of the measures and evaluations are quite time and labor intensive. So thinking about that time to build in for the evaluation and then the refinement or changes that you're going to make in your program or initiative. And then lastly, thinking carefully about a baseline comparison. So again, using playful learning landscapes as an example, all of the research done to evaluate those spaces used a control site. So maybe another park or play space in the same neighborhood, or in a museum context, another exhibit to compare to, and also looking at pre and post installation effects. And then lastly, I just have wanted to showcase some of the tools and resources that you can look to. A few of these were already shared with the initiatives that are part of the City Challenge. So you have the Urban Play Framework from Arup, you have the City at iLevel for Kids from STIPO and others. You have the Playful Learning Landscapes Playbook, which is actually going to be released tomorrow. So starting tomorrow, you'll be able to access this from the Playful Learning Landscapes Action Network website. You also have Designing Streets for Kids, that guide from NACTO. And then lastly, there is a transformative placemaking framework from the Brookings Institution, the Bass Center, and that's available on the Brookings website. And I believe that someone is either going to be putting in the chat all of the links to these, or they will be available after the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Helen. It was very interesting how you have managed to set both the framework and also giving many extra tools that we can look at. So thank you very much for your contribution. So moving on to the next presentation, we will be going to the winning placemaker presentation. So I would like to invite Upoma and Jahanara to share with us about their experience. So in each of the webinars, we'll hear back from one of the winners of the Real Play City Challenge. So Upoma, who is a manager of the design team, and Jahanara, who is a program specialist at BRAC Institute of Education and Development, they will be sharing with us their winning initiative, which is a community-based play lab in Dhaka in Bangladesh. It is a great example of how to create safe and child-friendly spaces in urban environments, and at the same time upskilling and training communities on the importance of play, which is also like really important to highlight. We invited Upoma and Jahanara today because of their thorough efforts in assessment and evaluation. You have 8 minutes to present to us your approach. Thank you very much for being here.
Hi everyone, I'm Jahanara, and Upoma and I are delighted to be here to introduce you to our PlayLab model. Next slide. The PlayLab model has been implemented since 2016 in partnership with several organizations like the Lega Foundation and Portugus. It is a comprehensive, low-cost, high-quality, play-based early childhood program for children aged 1 to 5 years, and we have primarily implemented this in low-income communities in Bangladesh, Uganda, and Tanzania. And the model has gone through several iterations since it was first implemented. Next slide. In 2016, we first started implementing the play labs in low-income communities in the above 3 countries. In 2017, the model's principles were adapted for the humanitarian context in the Rohingya camps of Bangladesh, and now the humanitarian play lab is implemented in partnership with Sesame Workshop, IRC, Lega Foundation, New York University. In 2018, we first started implementing the play labs in government primary schools around Bangladesh for children aged 4 to 5 years, as we worked in closer collaboration with the government to provide pre-primary education. In 2020, we've also started a new project to bring play-based learning to primary classrooms in government schools in Bangladesh. And also the model was adapted for COVID-19. For example, in Bangladesh, we are reaching out to families through weekly telephone calls to help parents facilitate play-based learning experiences for their children at home. Next slide. Now, the PlayLab model has a unique play-based curriculum that is designed to promote the holistic development of children. It is developed based on the early learning developmental standards of each country where it is implemented, and there is a daily routine and structure with a mixture of activities that are age appropriate. The activities are both child-led and they're both facilitated. Next slide. The curriculum is implemented by young women who are hired from the local community. These young women are known as play leaders, and we give them a week of training on topics like early childhood development, play-based learning. And after they start working, they also receive monthly in-service professional training of 1 day each. This continuous training helps them to develop their skills and empowers them to become advocates of play-based learning in their own communities. We have seen that the relationship between play leaders and children is fundamental to the successful implementation of the model. Next slide.
The Play Lab features play materials for children, which are made from low-cost, readily available, and recycled materials. These materials represent the culture and the uniqueness of that very area and the community. The space is designed and decorated in an age-appropriate and child-friendly manner to facilitate this joyful experience of learning. For example, the open space at the center of the Play Lab, it's open and very flexible so that it can facilitate these group activities. But then there are these corners, like these 4 corners, for example, the story world, color world, dream world, etc. These little corners, they give children the freedom to engage in activities of their own choice during the free playtime. The outdoor playground features play equipments which are built using low cost and locally available materials such as bamboo, recycled tires, etc. During this process, we also try to study and take inspiration from the local and traditional games and the ways of play. And we try to employ the local craftsmen, and this is also a way to promote the local and traditional building techniques. The playgrounds are designed in a scale-sensitive manner, and we keep in mind that every child has a specific need. For example, the children, they can choose to run around the playground and engage in a high-energy activity with their group of friends, but they can also choose to engage in a quiet activity by themselves or in a small group. The element which sort of connects all the other core elements is community engagement. We invite and engage mothers who build these play materials for children. They decorate the play labs, and they do it with so much joy and laughter. They share these moments, which gives them this ownership and this pride, and they feel proud of of making this play lab together, and they feel this ownership to their child's well-being. So during construction, also children and parents and play leaders, they come together and participate with joy in painting and decorating these playgrounds and building these play equipments. This design process benefits immensely from their unbounded energy and creativity.
So we have worked with researchers from Columbia University and Cambridge University to adapt, validate, and contextualize a range of tools that we use for research and monitoring. Small-scale pilot studies and regular monitoring of the play labs have shown the positive impact they are having on children in the community, and a larger, more comprehensive evaluation has been carried out over the past several years, and results are forthcoming. Next slide. I would like to end with two case studies that illustrate the impact the play labs have had. The first one is from a play leader who is talking about how initially parents were apprehensive in sending their children to the play lab, but over time, I quote, "Today the play lab is a well-known structure in my area. People have become used to the concept of learning through play, and more children are attending the play lab sent by willing parents." Next slide, please. And this quote is from a mother of a child who attended the play labs. She's talking about how she found the concept to be quite strange at first, but then it turned out to be an eye-opener. And she says, I quote, "I find myself being transformed into a child as well," which I think is lovely sentiment and sums up beautifully what we hope to do with the play labs. We want to bring the power and joy of play, not just to children, but to the communities and adults that surround them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you too. It was very inspiring to hear from your story. So thank you very much for sharing. And it's also interesting to see how you have a combination of tools as well as a qualitative approach towards your evaluation and monitoring. We will have the chance to talk more about it in the next part. So thank you very much. So now we can actually go indeed to the clinic, to the Playful Placemaking Clinic. So for this part, we have invited, of course, our previous speaker, Upoma Jahanara and Helen, along with Anna Siprikova, Husam Elokta, and Sam Sterny to share with us. Maybe I should first, of course, introduce our advisors here. So Anna Siprikova is a senior program associate at the Global Designing Initiatives. We invited Anna to share reflections from her work on Streets for Kids, including expertise in assessing and evaluating. Then we have Husam Elokta. I'm sorry, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. He's an operations manager and master planning lead at Happy City. Husam brings knowledge and experience of tools and experiments that support health and well-being in cities. And then we also have Sam Sterling, who's an urban behavioral consultant and advisor to the Urban 95 with Bernard Van Leeuwen Foundation. Sam has experience in analyzing the actual impact for children of urban initiatives and how to reach those all-important behaviors that support play. So thank you very much for all of you for joining us. This Playful Placemaking Clinic is an opportunity to learn and reflect on opportunities to scale placemaking initiatives with the BRAC community-based play lab as an example. So we will be using it as a case study. It will be an open and friendly discussion on how we can strengthen the practice. In the Q&A box below, you can use it to share your questions, all of you participants, to share your questions for the initiative, so for BRAC, that you'd like us to put to the speakers. So let's see. Are there any questions already? Yeah, actually, I'm now just noticing that there's no Q&A box. I'm really sorry. So you can put your questions in the chat box. I'm really sorry about that. maybe we can start our discussion. Maybe if Bragg have questions for the advisors relating to impact measurement, to tools, to approach. Is there something that you would like to address to the rest of the advisors to start the discussion? No? Okay.
What I found very interesting is the city level framework, and also the framework provided by Arup, especially for the design perspective of evaluation. So yeah, it's just I had this question in my mind, how to actually, start this evaluation process by the guidance of these frameworks. So maybe if anyone can advise on that.
If I may jump in and comment on this incredible project that you all shared, it's really amazing work, and I was just so many key points of it. I was really excited to see, and I'm gonna list some of the things that made me like just made my eyes sparkle a little, and I know I'm not gonna list everything, but the work you did is so important. It's so essential, right? And I think we're all here because we recognize that building cities for children and cities that are suitable for children is not just good for children, it's good for everyone. And that you did this work, especially in low-income communities, in ways that are so contextual and so attuned to the needs of the people. That is not an easy task to do. I know from my own experience working and growing up in Egypt, that especially in these low-income communities, one of the main challenges is that parents don't actually have time or money to take care of their children. So the care of the children, like growing up, tends to be a community activity where the oversight happens on the street. The care comes from so many different people in the community, and one major thing is that children especially don't have space and tools to learn how to play, to engage in science and engage in behavior that can be good for them. But the thing that I think really stood out for me is closer to the end in one of the quotes, that how one of the residents expressed a sense of distrust, like, are you coming to take my kids away from me? And that is so common because too often in various countries, and I'm speaking from my own experience, especially in developing countries, that when people from the outside come in, it doesn't end up well for the residents. And moving that relationship from a place of distrust to a place of trust, a place of openness, you're not just coming with one project, but you're coming to undo potentially and start healing past harms that have happened. And you're talking about not just providing benefit, but building capacity, building tools, building leadership from people within the community, whether they're the craftspeople or the play leaders, and all these elements. Really incredible work, and congratulations on doing that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for Thank you very much for sharing this this perspective on how the needs and the impact differs from place to place and from community to community. And of course, you can also look at it from different layers. First of all, looking at what the layer of impact on the child development can be, but also on the community level. And this is very important for placemaking and play together, that it's not how can I say it, like a very, it's not like a bubble. It is very flexible on how you could measure the impact. And this is how you also maybe need the relevant measurements and tools for that. So I was wondering if someone would have a specific case to share of how they have managed to measure impact in such a, fluid environment where children and community are together. If you have any example.
I can jump in here. Just want to second, that's a really heartwarming project. And just want to highlight the holistic aspects, that it's not just the playground with new design elements, but you're really including the programming part that's like very often overlooked when we talk about children. But to stay on topic, I just want to share one example when, as you were mentioning previously, with like so many different frameworks and like how to actually select the indicators, like what to measure. The approach that NACTO has been using in our own project is to kind of dissect it into kind of 3 areas to first identify what physical and operational changes are we doing to the project or to the community, then measure and observe shift in use and activity, and then finally kind of look at how it resulted in resulting impacts. And for example, just like a very simple example, if we're installing new benches around the playground or adding like street furniture to the street, this is our operational change, right? We added more sitting spaces. Then when we observe shift in behavior, we count like how many caregivers with children are actually lingering, staying, using these benches, pausing, like are there any play moments happening? Is it helpful for caregivers with young children specifically? It's a very common request. Like kids get fussy, they have tantrums, you really need some quiet space, or as we call it, like a workstation, to do whatever you need to do with your kid, like feed, change, just like calm down. And then as a resulting impact, we're looking at, is there an increase in positive experiences and social interactions between kids and caregivers. So this is just like a simple example how you can, like, through all this, like, huge ocean and a long list of different metrics and impacts, kind of separate it and kind of see this progressing from your physical change, programmatic change, to like, how do you actually track and realize like what's your resulting in. So I really suggest doing this exercise and kind of like trying to break it down into 3 columns. And then try not to measure everything. That's impossible, especially for community-led projects, for kind of ground up projects, and even for top-down projects. It's just like so much to measure. Like we always strive to measure as much as possible, but just be like kind to yourself and also recognize that like trying to select 5 or 10 kind of key priority points and just like stick to them over time is more important than just like try to measure everything but just once, or being consistent with your measurements. And always kind of going back to like, how do you going to tell the story with this measurements and data? So again, in our work, we always try to make sure that we're telling the story about the place, we're helping the community to tell their story, and all of this impacts and measurements are actually useful on both ends for us as researchers and designers, but also for kind of ongoing community support.
Thank you very much. That was a very, very valid point, because many times we get lost on what the reason behind the measuring the impact might be. And I think what you shared about being able to tell the story afterwards is a very, very important element, not only, for communications or outreach purposes only, but also for further community building. I think if you are able to tell your story based on either quotes or data, you can grow and really scale up the project itself as well. So, thank you very much, Anna. We also have some questions in the chat box, or I don't know if maybe would you like to share something before we move to the questions in the chat?
Sure, thank you very much. And again, just to echo, I think the other panelists, it's a really inspiring and exciting model, and I think it has there are a lot of elements in it that are really exciting. So I kind of want to maybe pull a couple of the things like Hussam that I was really excited about, and maybe put also some questions on the table for discussion as well. So on the question of M&E, I think it was really great to see all the different tools and the really systematic way that you guys have been thinking about M&E. And one thing I noticed, which I think is really critical, is you mentioned that you've now, over time, you've started partnering with public sector, with government schools to implement this. And I think that's really exciting because one of the things I've seen is I think it's quite interesting to think about how do we get the M&E, the monitoring and evaluation, the data that we're generating, not only to be used by us, but how do we get that into the public system? How do we get cities, city mayors and city administrations to start caring about these things? I bet you in Dhaka, in Kampala, in many of these cities, they know how many kilometers of road they have paved. They know what percentage of the population has access to sanitation and piped water. They have lots of data, but I guarantee you none of those cities could say, what is the average number of minutes per week that a 4-year-old child spends in active play with their parents? They are not gathering that data. We could actually gather that data. It's not impossible. In fact, many of our programs are gathering this type of data, but city managers, city administrators, the heads of the culture department or the sport department or the education department or the parks and green amenities departments, they are not gathering this data. So I think it's exciting to see that you're collaborating and connecting with city authorities. And I kind of wish that you could also, and maybe you are kind of starting to share with them some of the data and having them think about how could they be using this kind of data, or maybe gathering this data in a more systematic way. I think another point just to build, I think on Anna's point about not measuring everything and thinking about how we measure. Given that one of the things I love about your model is how participatory it is and how it really is bringing in the whole community and the parents. Part of me also wants to think about how can we involve. I think sometimes when we do M&E, we collect all the data for ourselves and we've got academic researchers and we're really excited to analyze the different things. How do we involve the community in our monitoring and evaluation? And how do we make sure that they are collecting data and indicators in a way that's meaningful for them, and that they can also use it to make decisions? Or how can we improve? How do we want to change things? So it's, and this is a challenge, I think, for everyone, right? It's sometimes our monitoring and evaluation is very extractive and we don't always give back, or we don't always involve the community. But since your model is already so participatory, I see a lot of kind of potential there for thinking about how could the parents, and again, these may be things that you're already doing, how to involve the parents and the community kind of in the M&E. Maybe one last point, and this is not so much on the M&E question, but I just kind of wanted to underline it because I thought it was really neat. The fact that parents were involved in kind of the building and the co-creation and the development of the toys and stuff, I think was really great. And I think my favorite moment of the presentation was that last quote where a mom, says, I feel like I've been transformed into a child. And I think from a behavior change perspective, which is what I work on, one of the things that a lot of play programs, I think, miss is they focus on what are kids doing at that location, in that space, during that time, and which is great. I mean, we want to have quality experiences in spaces, and you guys have created something wonderful. But I think many of the play programs don't think about how do we influence and how do we support parents to change their own behaviors, not just when they're in the space, but when they're at home or when they're doing other stuff. So when they're away from the space. And what I love about that quote is it kind of shows that you have, whether deliberately or accidentally, it sounds like your model is actually maybe also changing some of the behaviors of the parents, even when they're not in the space. And I think that is so exciting. I think it's something that many of the play programs should be thinking about much more deliberately, And I hope that you try to find some way of measuring that as well, because I think it's quite important for us to think about how can we rigorously measure some of the behavioral changes that may be happening in the home, far away from our actual site. So anyways, I'll stop there, but really exciting model and presentation.
Thank you
May I?
very much. Okay.
Hello. Thank you. This is Shakila from BRAC. Thank you so much, Sam. You are at a very important point. We are also very much careful about this M&E, because when we started this play model, I was responsible for this monitoring and evaluation, and we are very grateful that we have worked with Cambridge and other renowned universities and experts. Important thing is how we measure is a process, is outcome. What is the goal? I think this is very important. The process, even when they're doing the outdoor play, one of our intention was is to observe the child. This is very key, but from my understanding, that observing the children, their behavior, even every single activity is very important. For example, block play, free play. They did lots of dramatic play, even. We create a corner which is called Mother's Lab. It's basically a dramatic play corner. It also used for both purpose. For younger children, they can take rest. Sometimes they also do some kind of dramatic play. So we observed and we developed a tool we call this Fidelity tool. It's totally based on the play-based this curriculum, our model. So I think this is very important. Thank you so much for addressing this. I'm very glad. I'm happy, and thank you for inviting me. We will learn more about from all of you. Thank you.
Are there any more reflections on what was already heard? Maybe then I can take a question from the chat that I also find it very interesting. Since in placemaking, we talk about the lighter, quicker, cheaper approach towards the placemaking. So what can you make it happen today? Can we maybe also bring this feeling of lighter, quicker, cheaper also to assessment and monitoring? Because there might be initiatives that aren't yet so able to resource something from a comprehensive model and these kind of things. So if you are trying to integrate this lighter, quicker, cheaper approach, how can you do it? Feel free to pop up and suggest.
I'll jump in here quickly. Sam, you can go. I mean, one thing that we at Happy City tend to gravitate towards. I mean, we study happiness in cities, and happiness is inherently subjective. It's about how people feel. It's about how people perceive things. And one of the things I personally like the most about that is you can't make assumptions and kind of, you know, I mean, it's important to observe and it's important to have objective data, but the focus on asking people how they feel about spaces, whether they feel welcome, whether they feel like they belong to it. These are, we find, quite simple ways to understand how people experience space. I mean, there still needs to be a lot of complexity around it to ensure that you're actually doing a proper academic survey and etc. But none of these things require fancy monitoring tools or cameras or sensors or things like that. These things that can potentially be done in a low-cost way with some preparation. And they sometimes bring very compelling results and compelling narratives. I think someone was just mentioning how the transformation of a space can have broader effects. And one space that we worked on in Vancouver, we were studying how, you know, just a normal street intersection that was redesigned into kind of like a community living room. And the city asked us to study how the change affected people's well-being. And part of the study that we did was just those surveys and asking people who were there and seeing who was there and who wasn't there. And one thing that we found, for example, is that women were 50% more likely to use the space after the transformation, but also significantly more likely to feel welcome, to feel that they belong, to want to spend more time in there. And in the observations that we saw in that sense was that a big part of that was that their children could actually roam free around that space. There was an uptick of how children use that space that also made it more accessible to women. So we're seeing that, just these ways of transforming space, of assessing space, and of looking and understanding beyond what is obvious and trying to understand how people feel and how they perceive space can actually yield really interesting results and narratives.
Maybe just to jump in with, I totally agree with that, a couple of more examples or ideas. So I do think it depends what it is we're trying to measure or what we're trying to achieve. So I think, for example, from the sort of human-centered design toolkit, there are lots of really good tools for like really quick and dirty, like prototyping a new idea, bringing 4 or 5 versions of a toy or an intervention, or even making 4 or 5 different little spaces, and then doing some quick testing with the community, getting their feedback and having kind of a loop of test, get feedback, refine, test again. So there are some great, I think, methods out there that are really designed to be quite light and flexible and agile, and allow for kind of quick feedback loops. So I think that there are a lot of options there. I would even say, and I want to be careful with this. So I think there's sometimes an over focus on randomized control trials as sort of the gold standard, and I don't actually think that. I think they're a wonderful tool. I don't think they make sense for everyone in all situations at all. But I can share an example of a program that we worked with the Bernard Foundation with Urban 95 in Bogota, so in Colombia. They had upgraded parks, and they weren't really seeing that much use of the upgraded parks. And they decided they wanted to do an experiment to see if they could prompt parents to go out and use these parks more. And so they actually decided to do like a mini RCT, and they did it over 8 weeks, which I don't know if 8 weeks is quick and short or not. I think in the RCT world, it would be considered pretty fast. It was super cheap, super low cost. They gave, one set of parents a certain set of messages, another set of parents slightly different messages, and a couple of other nudges, behavioral economics kind of tricks. And they gathered, almost all the data was being gathered by surveys using, SMS or mobile platforms, so cheap and easy and fast. And they were actually able to get, the experiment got interrupted by COVID. So right in the middle of the experiment, when they were trying to get people to go out and play in parks, the city said, oh, we're shutting down, no more parks, no more outdoor play. But even though the kind of experiment got interrupted, they gathered some really interesting data. For example, they found that it looks like parents were spending more time in the parks, but they were actually spending less time playing at home. So we think, oh, wow, we're increasing play. And it turns out we're substituting outdoor play for indoor play, which may be good anyways. That may be something we care about, but it was interesting. Another thing they found was that the parents who responded the most to these kind of prompts and things were the parents who were already playing more with their kids at baseline. So we think, oh, wow, we've gotten all these new parents who weren't playing outdoors to play with their kids. And in fact, what they found is that it was the parents who were already playing more outdoors with their kids who increased their play most. And the ones who were least likely to do it were not. So again, this is not a critique. I think they learned a lot, and it caused them to say, wow, we really need to rethink our program and see how we can adjust and all of that. But I think it's a neat example of even something that may sound as daunting as a randomized control trial, where usually we think, oh my God, 5-year thing that costs millions of dollars. They were able to do that in a really short period of time, you know, over an 8-week period. So I think qualitative and quantitative methods both, there are some really good tools out there that allow us to do them quite quickly and to get really interesting and useful data back that allows us to improve up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sam. I think I will keep also your last sentence a little bit to sum up a little bit of our discussion so far, which is that depending, first of all, on the local context, so what are your needs, either the parenting needs or the cultural needs or the social needs or the needs that the space has, you need to have an adaptive model about what kind of qualitative and quantitative data you seek to collect, and especially for what kind of purpose. And from what I understand, there is no one solution that fits all cases. So you need to be very much adaptive and sensitive, maybe, if I may say, to the needs of each case. So probably even for our placemakers here who are going to replicate, maybe that one model works for one team of placemakers, maybe it doesn't work for another one. So this is something to keep in mind. Also, when we will move to the next part of this webinar, when we will be start sharing between us to see that what works for someone, maybe it might work for me, but maybe it might not. So thank you very much all for being here and sharing. We have run a little bit over time, so that's why you seem also a bit trying to wrap up a little bit fast, and I hope also in a cute way and not cutting the whole flow of discussion. So yeah, maybe we can go to what's up next. Hannah, do you agree? Thank you. So what we have coming up next are 2 more webinars. So the next sessions, again, as it has happened with this one and the previous one, it will be a combination of sharing knowledge and working on a specific case study. As today we work with BRAC, that it is one of our winning parts. And the second part of the webinar that is focused on internal exchanging. So the next one will be about play in vulnerable context, how to work with risk, opportunity, and safety. I think it's a very, very important topic to discuss. Like a hot one, if I may say, as today's as well. And the 4th webinar will be about safeguarding children and how to apply safeguarding participation principles. Also very important, especially when you consider the whole ecosystem of how we develop cities friendly for children. So we have the 25th and the 30th of November. A little bit of different times for the next one, but you will be invited accordingly to all of those. Next one. And of course, you can find out more about the inspiring winners of the challenge at the Replay City Challenge website. So feel free to find more information there. And if you want to get involved in claim places to play in your city, you can invite a placemaker to deliver initiatives where you are. So join the Real Play City Challenge LinkedIn group to connect with other placemakers that we're currently there and we are organizing ourselves. Or you can become a partner of the Real Play City Challenge to support building the momentum that currently is happening and the next edition of the challenge. Feel free, of course, to drop us a line at info@realplaycitychallenge.org. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for joining. See you in the next one. And yeah, thank you for being here.